Hey, good morning, guys. Today's lesson, we're going to continue on with tires. Before we dive into that, just want to say thank you for those of you who have turned in your work for me. Everything's looking pretty good. Just one point, make sure if that the question says explain, you're explaining. Don't just write the words, but explain why. I'm seeing a lot of people are just racing through and not really paying attention. So if we look at our objectives for today, we're going to talk about ag tires as it relates to more implement tires and front tractor tires. I'm just going to be pretty brief and then leave you all with these few questions to answer on your flashback. List the 4 types of ag tires that we see on the rear of the tractor, and then give me an application of each. And we kind of went through those yesterday. So without further ado, we'll dive in here. Tires in agriculture and in the world today are sized one of 2 ways. We have imperial and we have metric, like with everything. So our imperial tires are sized going by 2 things. If it's a vehicle tire or a wagon tire or an implement tire, they're going to give you 3 numbers. These 3 numbers indicate 1, the height of the tire as a whole, so from the top to the bottom. So this particular tire here is 31 inches tall, so they call it the 31. The next number is going to be the tire width. So from one side of the tread to the other, not from the rim all the way over, but from one side of the tread to the other across the tread. So the tread width on this particular tire is 10.5. And then we go with the rim size, which is a diameter measurement. It's a 15. So 31, 10.5, 15. Now, if you look at wagon tires or drill tires, manure spreader tires, they might not have this first increment. So it might not say 31. It might just say 10.5, 15, or 9.5, 15, or 700, 15, 7.00, 15, which are all common implement tires. A 700 15 and a 7.5 or a 750 15 are very common old imperial measurements for like livestock trailer tires or car hauler trailer tires. We still see some tire manufacturers manufacture tires this way, but we're phasing away because the country's making a big push, or the world's making a big push rather, to stick with metric, and our country's trying to become as metric as possible. So in the metric system, we still utilize 3 numbers, but they are significantly different. So let's talk about that. The first number we have here is the tire width. So we don't worry about the whole height of the tire. We actually worry about the tire width. So if we look at any tire, if we go by these sizes here, the 205 is going to be that tread width. So from one side of the tread to the other. 205 is a measurement in millimeters of that width. So 205 millimeters. Okay. Next, we have this thing called aspect ratio. Aspect ratio is defined as the percentage of the sidewall of the tire, which is from the rim to the top of the tread, okay, as a percentage of this particular tread width. So if we are looking at a 205/55, it's going to be 55% of 255 or 205 millimeters. So quick math on my phone calculator, that would be 112.75 millimeters. And then the rim diameter is our last one with the R. R is rim 16, so it's a 16-inch rim. So we still utilize the imperial system with that metric measurement. Now, it can kind of get confusing, so I'll show you here. We've got tires. These are 285/38, okay? So it's a wide tire, 285 millimeters. 285 millimeters. The 30 is 30% of, so it's the sidewall, 30% of 285, so 285 times 0.3. That is a 85.5 millimeter sidewall, so pretty much a rubber band, and it's on an 18-inch rim. Okay. We can, just by changing one digit, significantly change what that tire looks like. So here is a 285/70 18. Again, our tread width is still 285 millimeters, but now we are taking 70% of that tread width as the height of the sidewall. So 285 times 0.7, that sidewall goes up to 200 mil, essentially. So from 85 mil being a rubber band up to 200 mil, still on that 18-inch rim. So, they vary significantly. A lot of people, like, they get in a bind and they want to, just get a tire. You can put essentially a lot of what depends upon what's going to fit on a rim or a wheel depends on mostly the diameter of that rim. So on a farm wagon, if you have a flat and the farm wagon has a 9.5 15-inch flotation tire on it, you might be able to. You could call and see if that your tire shop's going to have a 9.5 15, and they say all we've got's a 9 15. Well, a 9.5 is 9.5 inches wide. Your 9 is 9 inches wide, so it would work. It could get you by. If that, you call and they say all we've got is a 7.5 15, it's going to be a very narrow tire, right? So the same is true of truck tires, but that aspect ratio is so significant that you have to make sure it's going to work correctly. And especially on automobiles, if your aspect ratio, that percentage, is off quite a bit, it can actually distort how the truck runs, especially if it's on the rear end. The gearing is going to be all out of whack. So you really need to stick with the same size across the board. Some of the really odd size tires can be kind of costly. My parents have a Honda CR-V and it's got a funky size tire on it. But if you move up one size or down one size in the 16, you can adjust the aspect ratio a little bit and you can see how it's going to fit. They do make these tire conversion calculators. So let's see. If you want to compare two tires here, so for example, we're going to compare two tires. So let's say we're going to get a 225 45 15, and at the tire store they've got a 225 60 15. You can compare those two. So size 1 is going to be 23 inches. Size 2 is going to be 25.6 inches. So it's significantly bigger. So if your standard tire size was this 225 45 15, you're actually putting a much taller tire on your vehicle. Now, if it were like a 205 60, well, we're taking that percentage of the 205 here. Or if we did a 205 and a 225. So these are kind of fun to play around with. So you can see just how much, changing one number can play into the size of the tires, or a 235 versus a 225, or, whatever it might be. So again, as a consumer, you can do some research and see kind of what your advantages and disadvantages are. There are also these guides online if that you have a vehicle or a farm implement that has an Imperial tire on it, but you want to go to a metric, you can kind of see what you've got. So if we were to look here at a 10-inch wide, maybe you had a 10-inch wide 15 Well, if you wanted to, you could put a 225, 75, 15 on there. Again, the 30 is just the entire diameter of that tire. Tire construction also varies differently. There's two types of tires that are made out there. One is called a bias tire, and one's called a radial. So let me explain the differences to you. And there's another schematic that you can look at. So a bias tire means that the fibers or the cords in the tire cross at a diagonal. And essentially what happens is this whole tire can flex and bow. We don't see a lot of bias tires manufactured for cars anymore because the radial has a stronger sidewall and a stronger tread pattern. A radial has the cords going along the radius of that tire, and then we have the cording going perpendicular to it. So it just goes back and forth. So we get a firmer tire with the radial. Again, the majority of your automobile tires are going to be radials. There are still a lot of bias farm tires made. So when we look at flotation tires, you could see that we have pretty much this one just kind of bubble. And again, we call this a flotation tire because it's not going to put too much of a concentrated pattern down on the surface that we are passing. So here's another example of a bias flotation tire. This is a radial, and you can see that it has a definitive tread path going across from the sidewall to sidewall. So that cording just runs right across there, and then they put this tread cap on in the radial form. So bias versus radial. Here's another ag style radial that we're seeing. Again, we have the sidewall, and then we have this definitive tread path here. Tires on the sidewall, it will tell you if it's a bias or if it's a radial. Again, the majority are going to be radials. This is a radial front tire. We call this a 3-rib because there's 1, 2, 3 ribs. These allow for easier steering on farm tractors. A lot of farm tractors will either have this or they'll have one of these 5-rib flotations as the front tire. So, guys, if we refer back to our questions here, I just want you to go ahead and answer those for me. Share your answers with me, and we will probably we'll talk on Monday about tire installation, and then move into tractor transmissions and final drives. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. I'll be by the computer most of the day today, so I'll try and get back to you as soon as possible. Otherwise, we'll talk again Monday. Take care, guys.